Going Beyond Emotional Intelligence with Ken Sande of Relational Wisdom 360. That is your topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis, lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
Hello, I'm Sheryl Jackson-Matthews. I'm mediator and arbitrator in the state of Texas.
Awesome. And with us, a special guest, Ken Sande. And Ken is of Relational Wisdom 360, a nonprofit organization, and he's going to share all about it today. But let me just give you a quick introduction to the special guest. Ken is the founder of Relational Wisdom 360 and the author of the book Peacemaker. So he was found and brought to my attention today by Sheryl. Actually, we had a recent episode where we were talking about October being Conflict Resolution Month. And after the recording, Sheryl is like, hey, are you familiar with rw360.org? And I was not. I went ahead and checked out the website, and after discovering what the work that you do, Ken, I decided, you know what, I got to reach out to you and have you come on the show. So, Ken, welcome to LMI Podcast.
Thanks, Mac. It's a privilege to be here.
Awesome. And so let me read a little bit of your bio because you've done a lot. I mean, lawyer, engineer, mediator. And so Ken Sande is the founder of Peacemaker Ministries and RW360. Trained as an engineer, lawyer, and mediator, Ken has conciliated hundreds of family, business, church, and legal conflicts. He is the author of numerous articles and books, including The Peacemaker, which has sold over 500,000 copies in 20 languages. He teaches internationally on biblical peacemaking, Christian conciliation, and relational wisdom, which is an enhanced form of emotional intelligence that helps people, quote, get upstream of conflict by improving their ability to read and manage emotions in themselves and in others. And so, Ken, the topic of emotional intelligence is a big buzzword in the mediation business, in the mediation world. And so, but now you've added to it, right, with relational wisdom. So, tell us, what is relational wisdom? And but before you do, we always ask people to tell us something special about yourself that most people would not know.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, it's interesting. My background was initially in engineering, and people say, well, do you feel like you wasted that education? I say, no, actually, I used that training more than my legal education, because what I learned as an engineer was problem solving. And the first class, literally the first class, first day of engineering school, the professor said that engineering is nothing more than taking a problem, breaking it into its component pieces, applying the proper laws to each piece, and never violating the laws. And that's peacemaking, that's mediation, that's problem solving. So I'm just very grateful for that training and background. Even though people think of me more as a mediator and a lawyer, I'm just grateful for that engineering training.
Got it. So that's peacemaking. So how does peacemaking or being a peacemaker connect or differ from relational wisdom, what you've started?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, as you said, I started initially with Peacemaker Ministries, which was founded to resolve conflicts, initially conflicts between Christians, to try to help them through mediation or arbitration rather than going to secular courts. And I spent about 30 years there. I saw the Lord do some amazing things, seemingly impossible disputes. My father was a attorney and judge, and I remember him telling me a lot of these cases were hopeless, and then I'd tell him this amazing result, and he was just amazed. He said, I've never seen that happen before. So I had the privilege of being in on a lot of reconciliations, churches, marriages, etc. But in 2012, after 30 years of putting out the fires of conflict, I thought, I think I'd rather help prevent the fires of conflict. And so that's why I decided to change my focus to this new concept of relational wisdom. And relational wisdom is basically a values-based form of emotional intelligence. And as you said, emotional intelligence is a very popular concept today. I'm amazed that even in the last 10 years, how many more people are familiar with it, being trained in it. But as good as emotional intelligence is, and I'm a certified EI instructor with a group called Talent Smart, which is the leading corporate trainer, excellent training, very grateful for it. But if you go online and you just Google the dark side of EI, you'll find that there's some downsides to emotional intelligence. And just for example, one of the emotional intelligence skills is being able to read other people's emotions. Well, that can be really a good thing. But if you've got the wrong motives, you can use that skill to manipulate people. And there's a lot of people who abuse that skill, whether it's in a marriage, in a business, in a church, governmentally. And so what I wanted to do was take the best of the neurological, psychological information we have because of emotional intelligence, but combine that initially a biblical framework, a theological framework, what is good, what is right, what is loving, what is helpful, what is serving. So we developed a biblical version of that where we brought biblical moral values into the picture. And we also have a secular version that is not tied to any particular religion, but it challenges people to really examine their own value system and say, am I using these emotional intelligence or even these peacemaking skills in a way that has integrity, that serves other people, or am I operating on the dark side? And so between those two formats, secular and faith-based, we teach in hundreds of churches all around the world. We've taught at the Pentagon. I've taught on Capitol Hill to congressmen and senators, state legislatures, and a lot of businesses are bringing this in as a form of professional development training. So getting back a more succinct answer, Mac, emotional intelligence is really how do I read and manage my emotions and the person I'm talking to in a way that I can head conflict off at the pass, that I can see earlier that maybe my spouse woke up, didn't get a good night's sleep, is a little bit irritable today. So I need to be especially patient, especially gentle. And maybe I go to the office and a coworker is like that. So just learning how to read people can prevent a lot of conflicts. But then even when you're in a conflict, these emotional intelligence skills are very helpful because I could be talking to you about a conflict and you could be saying it's about one thing, but if I'm reading your facial expressions, your tone of voice, trying to figure out what's really going on here, I think Mac's unhappy I didn't invite him to my birthday party. That's the real issue here. So, yeah. And I found that again and again, what people present to you as the legal or mediation issue is often not the major issue. It's something else going on, and it's often attached to some pretty strong emotions.
Good. Yeah, sure.
I read quite a bit of your material last night. I was up to 1 a.m.
Wow.
How long did it take you to develop the RW theory?
I was working on it for a few years in a casual way. When I travel, if I've got time, I'll duck into a Barnes and Noble and just read books. I kept noticing all these EI books. Mm-hmm. And at first I thought, just pop psychology. But I finally picked up the emotional intelligence book by Dan Goleman. And of course, Dan is sort of like the guru of emotional intelligence. And I use that in a positive way. He's brilliant. And I started reading it and I thought, oh my goodness, there is a lot of valuable information here about the human brain, the limbic system, the neocortex, amygdala hijacking, the way our endocrine system and dopamine, oxytocin, vasopressin, they affect our emotions, which affect our behavior, which affect our relationship. So I over a couple of years, Sheryl, I just began reading more and more about emotional intelligence. But then I also started coming across the information on the dark side, how it could be misused or abused. And so I started looking at it also through a biblical moral framework. I'd say from the first time I began to seriously look at it to when I really began to develop and come up with the initial RW paradigm, probably a couple of years in that time.
Got it. Got it. Very fascinating. You mentioned one of the words, amygdala hijacking, is something
Mhm.
that I had heard before. Could you go a little bit into it? I guess in the wider context of just how much control we have over our emotions to begin with, because this is a
Yeah,
really big deal.
yeah, it is. And by the way, we have a extensive online courses that go into a lot of this information in more detail. But I'll give you a quickie here.
Sure.
Think of the amygdala. It's a part of the limbic system, the brain. Think of it as your experiential emotional filing cabinet. It's where the memories and experiences of life are stored. And the memories that we can store and remember the most clearly are the ones that have intense emotions associated with it. Our wedding day, first child, parent dying, getting fired from a job, either positive or negative memories. They're stored away, and when we start to experience something else in life that is similar to one of those things, it taps in to those emotions. It's like a rubber band already pulled tight. And suddenly, boom, the emotion associated with that previous experience comes into the existing one. And so the typical description of amygdala hijacking is a sudden sensation or experience that triggers an impulsive reaction that we quickly regret. Think of a parent who's had a hard day, comes home, walks in, stumbles over a child's toy, and just blows up and yells at that child. Very disproportionate response to the child. The child didn't do it, but all that emotion's been sort of bottled up, and boom, it comes out against the child. Part of amygdala hijacking has to do with actually the geography of the brain. The amygdala is right at the top of the spinal cord where the sensations come. It's like the entry, room to our brain. So it gets sensations first that can trigger an emotional response before that sensation gets out the neocortex, which is about, 3 or 4 inches further away. It takes a little bit longer to get up there. And that's why they call it hijacking. You get an emotional response, it takes over your body, typically our tongue. We speak and say things impulsively, but sometimes, hitting, slapping, physical violence. And so it's one of the main things we really try to do is help people become aware of what's going on there, the neurology of what's happening, and then some very simple techniques that can help people to overcome that hijacking sensation so they're not doing these things that hurt relationships and hurt other people.
Thank you for that. That's a very interesting theory, or definition. Um, I was wondering if, in fact, I just lost my train of thought. That's why I'm kind
Right.
of searching. Um,
Oh, sorry, did that put you on the spot?
uh, yeah, right.
Oh no,
No, go ahead.
yeah, no, I'll just kind of follow up. The reason I brought up emotional hijacking was because, like, to me, human beings are creatures of emotion. Okay,
Mhm.
and every time I think, but I'm the exception. Every time I think I'm the exception, I realize that I'm not, right. I'm just
Mhm.
another human being that reacts same ways. As a mediator, I'm supposed to look at my parties and try to be neutral and help them calm down, de-escalate. But then when I go through something, I end up having the same kind of reactions that my
Mhm.
parties do. So then, what is the solution? I understand how it happens and why it happens and how we get triggered and how we then react out of impulsivity. But then, what is the solution when people
Mhm.
find ourselves, because we think we're people of goodwill, that we don't mean to harm anybody?
Sure.
So how do we do it? Is it a preventative thing?
Mhm.
Is it something that we just have to suffer through and hope for the best? What's the solution?
Well, you can be both preventative and then also when something takes you by surprise, get better and better at handling it. So preventative would be just learning how to read yourself before the emotions get too strong. Simple example, maybe in a first job 10 years ago, I had a very harsh, critical boss, and my job performance reviews were extremely painful. I'm going into a job performance review in a new company with a new boss who's a really great person. And yet, as I go into that thing, I find my heart is pounding, my respiration is up, I'm sweating. What's going on here? Well, the memories of that previous job and those horrible job performance reviews there are coming into me today. So once I recognize that, okay, hey, my current boss is wonderful. He's encouraging. He's helping me advance. And you basically get your neocortex, your reasoning capacity involved. And then the same thing can happen in the middle of a situation where suddenly you're caught by surprise. And what we want to do is have really solid neurology. We want to have a really solid theology, bring those together. So we've got a rigorous foundation of good, solid knowledge. But we also know that people can't read, a 300-page book in the middle of a conflict with their boss. So we've also developed some very simple acrostics. And acrostics are just simple little memory devices that you can memorize, practice certain skills over and over again. And then in the middle of an emotional situation, you go back and sort of grab that acrostic and you hold on to it because it's simple, it's memorable. So for example, with amygdala hijacking, or just how do I become more self-aware, self-engaging, self-controlling, the acrostic we teach is called READ, R-E-A-D. You need to read yourself. R stands for recognize and name the emotion. As soon as I recognize what's going on, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm fearful. Just the process of attaching a name, even if it's mental, you don't even say it verbally, it triggers the neocortex because that's where your language skills are located. So instead of operating just in your emotional part where all your emotions are churning, you've actually turned on the reasoning and impulse control part of your brain, the neocortex. So now your brain is working together as a unit, both emotions moving you forward, but they're under the control of your reasoning capacity. So recognize and name the emotion is the first one. E stands for evaluate the emotion. This is more getting your brain involved, your thinking, your logic, your reasoning. Evaluate, why am I feeling this way? Well, 10 years ago, I had a terrible boss. He was really harsh with me, and that's painful. So I think, but that was 10 years ago, and it's not this boss. This is a new good boss. So you're, again, thinking logically, taking control of your thoughts. A stands for anticipate. Anticipate the consequences if you just go with your emotion. And if your emotion is you're just terrified of this job performance review and you just want to run away or quit, well, that's not very smart. I'm going to lose this great job and all the benefits. I won't be able to pay my mortgage. That's not helpful. So you're just sort of thinking through the consequences of just being pushed along by that particular emotion. And then D is direct. How do I take the power of this emotion and channel it into a constructive direction? And the metaphor we use when we're teaching that acrostic is sailing, a sailboat. Emotions are like the wind. They push us along, they move us. The word actually derives from a Latin word which means to move. That's what emotion's designed to do. So think of a sailor. The wind is there. A smart sailor checks a weather report before he goes out in the bay. I used to sail a lot on San Francisco Bay. You check the weather report. So you try to anticipate any intense emotions coming down the road, okay? But if you're out already sailing and the wind comes up, you try to look, there's white caps. I see things are blowing. I need to sort of lower some sails, change my course, get my hand on the tiller. I'm taking control. And now that big, intense wind that might have capsized me is actually moving me across the bay so fast, I'm going to win the race. So you take the power of that emotion and you channel it into something constructive. And so it's probably our most popular acrostic because there's so many people that wrestle with this amygdala hijacking, just where their emotions cause them to say or do something that they later regret. A simple technique there also is if you are in a situation where you think you might react emotionally, go into that meeting and always take a cup of coffee or a bottle of water and just make up your mind that before you open your mouth, you will take a sip of water, a sip of coffee. It takes about 6 seconds, and that's about how much time your brain needs for the neocortex to catch up with the amygdala. If you can just delay a response, that's like the old adage, count to 10. Well, actually counting to 6 is really all you need. If you can just delay a response for 6 seconds, you will usually not say and do a lot of the things that get you into trouble.
I remember what my question was. And I have a comment as well. Mac wanted to show the world how I found this website. But you would not believe the website found me. It
Oh,
really did. I did not Google it. I have not read anything about it. It's kind of just popped up.
oh,
And as Mac and I were talking, I was like, "Are you familiar with this organization?" And he said, "No." And I thought, we need to dig into that.
hmm,
So I just wanted to mention that because, things happen sometimes that you really can't explain.
mhm.
But I'm glad I found you.
Well, I found that God can use the internet to direct people. I had one lady told me she went to the internet and she just typed in the word help.
Mm.
Mm,
That word doesn't appear on our web. It's not on our and boom, our website came up immediately. She was in the middle of a
wow.
pending divorce. She typed in help. I sincerely believe God brought our website up in front of her. We got involved, mediated, saved that marriage.
Wow. Um, you're secular and you're um,
Faith-based.
yes, faith-based
Mhm,
lessons or theory or
mhm,
how do you distribute it? Is it sold
mm.
or and the classes?
Yeah.
Kind of expound on that for a moment.
Well, first of all, there's a wealth of free information available on our website. People can download a great deal of information. We've got hundreds of blogs dealing with legal disputes, mediation, business, workplace, marriage and family, church and nonprofit. There's a free downloadable booklet called Guiding People Through Conflict. If you just go to our website and just go into resources, it says free downloads.
Hmm.
So people can download a lot. We also have several free courses available on our RW Academy. That's our platform for our formal training courses. And you can go there. One of the recent ones just called the Relationally Wise Leader. It's a 2-hour free seminar that gives you a pretty broad overview of relational wisdom, peacemaking, and leadership applications. So a lot of free material. But if you want to dig in deeper, you go to our RW Academy, our online training, and there's foundational courses in relational wisdom. The faith-based one is called Discovering Relational Wisdom. The values-based one is called Exploring Relational Wisdom. And so we can go to a business owner. Maybe you've got a Christian business owner, for example. He likes the quality of our materials. He loved to use it for professional development for his whole workforce, but he doesn't want to overtly proselytize or force any particular, faith-based material. So he can actually buy seats at the table. Let's say he's got 50 employees. He buys 50 seats at the RW Academy, but each employee chooses for himself or herself whether to do the secular version or the faith-based version. So it's freedom of choice, and they can go in that way. But we do provide crossover links between each course. And
Hmm.
so at several places, you could be in the faith-based course, for example, and there'll be a button that says if you'd like to see a values-based version of this concept, for example, establishing a worldview, click here. So you sort of slide over to the other course for just a moment, then you come back, and vice versa. So people can actually get a lot of the key content from both courses, whichever one they decide to go through. And then there's more advanced training on being an instructor, a coach, a conciliator. We have more advanced levels as well.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Great. Thank you.
Yes. And so basically, you don't have to necessarily be a Christian or
No,
a person who's going to Sunday school every single Sunday to get something of value out of this. The values-based version of your courses will
yeah,
help anybody who's looking to build further upon their emotional intelligence.
absolutely. Yeah, the values-based course actually fits the 6 primary worldviews. There's theism, which is Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. There's pantheism, polytheism, humanism, naturalism. I forget, there's one more ism in there. But those are like the 6 primary worldviews. And so our values-based course can be used in any of those worldviews.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so for this episode, we're going to wrap it up and talk to you again on another topic. So, everyone, check out rw360.org. That's the website to reach Ken Sande and learn more about relational wisdom. Thank you so much, Ken, for coming on the LMI podcast.
Thank you, Mac and Sheryl. So good to be here with you. Bye.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Sheryl, for
You're
joining me
welcome.
today.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. Until next time, talk soon. Bye bye.